Good afternoon. Welcome in for the first time in 2 weeks. It is game day for the Missouri Tigers. That will happen in Nashville 90 minutes from now. Mizzou and the Vanderbilt Commodores in a game. I don't really want to call it the game of the week. I don't really want to call it the biggest game anywhere other than maybe Columbia and certain neighborhoods in the west end of Nashville, but it is a game. Missouri and Vanderbilt will go at it at 2 o'clock on the SEC Network. You can listen to Mike Kelly and Howard Richards. And we will be here to lead you up to it for the next hour and 15 minutes, somewhere in that neighborhood, however long we go. Right here on the pregame call presented to you every week by the Call and Gentry Law Group. They are located in Jefferson City. You do not have to be located yourself in Jefferson City to take advantage of their services. You can get a hold of the team at Call and Gentry online at callgentry.com. I'm on their website right now. They have a button that says schedule consultation. You can do that online. If you'd prefer to talk to somebody, you can give them a call at 573-691-4552. Again, 573-691-4552. Jason, Emily, Chip, a bunch of other people down there can take care of you. And really anything you need as far as legal advice goes. Maybe you are in trouble with your best friend because you are forcing him to sit down and watch 3.5 hours of Missouri and Vanderbilt on Saturday afternoon, and he is messing with you for cruel and unusual punishment. So, but if you're here watching this, we assume you have some interest in this game. And this is, jokes aside, a pretty important game for Missouri football. They come in 0-3 in the SEC. They are one of 5 teams in the country that does not have a Power 5 win so far this season. Now, fortunately, they're facing one of the other 5 teams that does not have a Power 5 win this season. So by the end of the day, that number should have gone from 5 to 4, assuming Arizona, Kansas, and I don't know, somebody else don't get a Power 5 win today. I think it's pretty safe to assume Arizona and Kansas will not. Either Missouri or Vanderbilt certainly will, because barring something really unforeseen, this one is not going to end in a tie. Missouri is a 16.5-point favorite. Look, let's just say right off the top, this is a game they should win. I don't think there's a whole lot of doubt about that. Missouri is not great, but it is a better team than Vanderbilt. Vandy has a 3-point win over Colorado State, a 2-point, I believe, win over Connecticut this year. They have been outscored ridiculously in SEC play. I think South Carolina beat them 21-20. In Vanderbilt's other 3 SEC games, they've scored 6 points combined. They've been shut out twice. They're not a very good team. Missouri really struggles on one side of the ball. They don't have a very good defense, right? We are well aware of that. But offensively, Missouri scoring 34 points a game, and they're okay. They're not perfect, but they're good enough offensively to be 4-3, maybe even 5-2. Vanderbilt, guys, these numbers are unbelievable, and I am going to put them up for you on the screen here. Look at these numbers. Vanderbilt's averaging 291 yards of total offense. Now, there was a time where almost 300 yards of total offense a game was pretty good, but that time was like 35 years ago. It's not good anymore. They're averaging less than 100 yards rushing per game, less than 200 yards passing per game. They're turning it over nearly twice a game. You see Missouri's numbers there on the left side of the screen. Again, as I said, they're not the best offense in the country, but they aren't bad, right? So you say, well, Vanderbilt, okay, they don't have a good offense, but what's their defense like? Is that pretty decent? It isn't. They're giving up 35.4 yards per game. They're allowing 21 first downs per game. They're allowing 5.1 yards per rush, 6.5 yards per play. Their defense is basically like a little bit better than Missouri's, and the offense is far worse than Missouri's. Now, the one thing that Vanderbilt has done well It has 10 interceptions. So Connor Bazelak is going to have to take care of the football today. That's an important thing. If Missouri does that, they realistically should win this game. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. Now, look, we've seen some bad Missouri or some bad Vanderbilt teams, or at least one bad Vanderbilt team beat Missouri. All right? Just you only got to go back 2 years. Everybody knows that one. They lost 21-14. Kelly Bryant couldn't get anything done. It ultimately cost Barry Odom his job. So it's not impossible. Missouri is not nearly good enough to roll helmets out and win this game. But over the next hour or so, we're going to talk to Chris Lee from VandySports.com. We're going to bring Mitchell Forty in, and normally we have Mitch on the phone from the stadium. He is actually going to be on video with us from his place because the SEC rules this year are that the road team does post-game interviews on Zoom. So we simply are not paying our own money to go on the road and spending money on hotel rooms and food when the interviews are all done on a computer screen. Like, I'm not going to pay, a few $100 to have Mitch go sit in the press box to do interviews. So he will be joining us live for a little bit longer than usual on video, and he and I will talk about this game. But the first thing we always want to do, we just want to get to your guys' comments and questions and what you have to say about this game. We'll kind of set the scene there. Jonah says, got to set the tone early, no turnovers, and you can't lose this one. And that's what this really is. This is a must-win game for Missouri. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, I say must-win. What happens if they don't? I don't know. It means they're 3-9 instead of 5-7. That's worse. I don't know that it matters all that much. Eli Drinkwitz isn't getting fired, anything like that. But momentum that has been, I think, at least stalled is a fair way to put it. That would be like thrown into reverse. If you think the fan base is unhappy now, lose to Vanderbilt and see where things go. That would take this from like a level 6 irritation, I think is about fair for the fan base, to level 12 and 6 to midnight to use a common internet phrase, but not in the right way. Be more like 6 to -6 at that point. This is a game that, regardless of any problems Missouri has had, Mizzou fans expect to win this game, and they should. There's no question about it. So, moving on with your questions, Robert Connolly wants to know thoughts on the injury report. Anybody ruled out today already? So I'm going to go back and look at the injury report, which came out 2 days ago. Let me find it real quick. Hang on. I'm going to have to go back. Okay, here we go. Nobody is listed as definitely out other than Case Cook and Chris Turner, who we knew about, who Eli Drinkwitz announced during the bye week had season-ending injuries. For Turner, it's a leg injury of some sort. For Case Cook, it's a shoulder injury, among numerous other things, but I think the shoulder is the one keeping him out. Mookie Cooper also ruled as out, so he is the other one. Also, Devin Butler is out, but frankly, he hasn't played this year anyway, so no disrespect to Mr. Butler, but that isn't really a big deal. So Case Cook, Chris Turner, Mookie Cooper not playing. That is a starter and 2 rotational players. Although Cook has missed a lot of time this year, I think he's only played about 3, maybe 4 games this season. So, Missouri has operated without him a lot. Connor Wood and EJ Ndoma Ogar are likely to pick up the slack and get those snaps at guard. Doubtful in this game, Ish Burdine, Chance Looper, Sean Robinson, Johnny Walker. Guys that see the field, certainly. None are starters, but Robinson, Looper, and Burdine have played a fair amount. Walker has played some. But here's really, when that injury report came out, there was a lot of reaction. Oh, no, we're missing all these guys. Well, guys, we've spent all year kind of saying, hey, they're not playing very well. Is it that big a deal? Who can miss a game on this team other than Beatty and maybe Bazelak and probably Harrison Mevis, where you say, oh, my God, everything is terrible now? I mean, I don't know. Is there anybody that you lose them and you say, well, that really changes the game? outside of those guys I just mentioned? I really don't think so, and I certainly don't think Ish Burdine, Chance Looper, Sean Robinson, or Johnny Walker are in that category. Under the questionable category, and look, we don't know what questionable means. Questionable can mean a million different things to a million different people, right? But Chris Abrams-Drain, Barrett Bannister, Akil Byers, Allie Green, Mike Maietti. Obviously, that starts to get into the territory, especially, I think, with Abrams-Drain and Maietti, where you're going, okay, now this is starting to be a little bit more of an issue. Byers, I don't know, defensive line hadn't been any good. Bannister, he hadn't played a ton. Allie Green, again, defense hadn't been all that good. So I don't know if taking them out and swapping in a replacement player is necessarily a huge change for Missouri. It is a long injury list, but here's the other thing to remember, guys. You only know about this because Eli Drinkwitz puts out an injury report, right? Vandy may be missing that many guys. Georgia may be. Tennessee may be this week. South Carolina may be this week. We just don't know because most of the coaches haven't put out injury reports. So, look, it is significant. It is notable, but I don't think it's like this huge issue that some of these guys are out. Ron Davis says, what do you want to see from Drinking Company the rest of the way to show he's got the football part headed in the right direction? Just wins, man. I mean, at least today and South Carolina. And be competitive against Florida and Arkansas at a minimum. I'm not going to hold you. Whatever happens in Athens, Georgia, whatever degree of assault that ends up being on Saturday, I'm not all that worried about that. Plenty of teams are having issues being competitive with Georgia. But you've got to win this game. And you probably got to win South Carolina. And you've got to give yourself a chance against Florida and Arkansas, right? And if you can pull one of those off and get back to 6-6, I don't think anybody's doing cartwheels, but at least it will have shown, all right, they didn't quit on you. Because I think that's a fair question after the last few games is, does he still have command of this team in this locker room? I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying I think it's fair to ask based on what we saw against Tennessee, what we saw in the second half against North Texas, what we saw in the first half against Texas A&M. That was a team I watched and said, I have severe questions whether they're really trying as hard as they can because, excuse me, they shouldn't be this bad. So that's the main thing I want to see. And I know a lot of people say, well, I want to see this specific part of the game get better, and I just want to see him score more points than the other team to show me they're going in the right direction. Another thing, one specific area I think you would like to see, penalties. Missouri is, not been well-disciplined in the last few games. And I think you go back to, I think it was the Boston College game maybe, where on a kickoff, on a touchback, which when you're Missouri, you know a kickoff is going to be a touchback almost all the time. Missouri got a personal foul penalty. In 7 games, they are averaging just under 7 penalties a game for just over 60 yards per game in penalties. It's gotten worse in the last few. That's an area you'd like to see cleaned up. And look, you know what? Holding, it happens, right? An illegal block here and there happens. I'm talking about the stupid penalties, the personal fouls, the taunting, the jumping off sides for no reason. Those type of penalties are the ones you look at, and those are indications of a team. And look, many Missouri fans over the last 3-4 years had been saying, well, that's my problem with Barry Odom's teams. They just look undisciplined. This is an undisciplined football team right now. Make no mistake about that. The mistakes and the penalties they have made, they're the same problems that had everybody so mad 2-3 years ago. Now, I understand. It's year 2. I'm not firing anybody. I'm just saying if we're being consistent, these are some of the things that you saw in the previous regime that was so upsetting, and a lot of them are still happening. So Justin Ferguson wants to know, is today the day Connor Bazelak throws down the field and has a big day? I actually think it's the opposite today. I think this is the day you feed Tyler Beatty and you use the short controlled passing game to go down the field. I don't think you need big shots against Vanderbilt. They're scoring 13 points a game. The one thing they do is intercept opposing quarterbacks fairly well. It's like 10 and they've already played 8 games. So, I mean, it's not elite, but they do a decent job of that. So I don't think this is the day you come out asking Connor Bazelak to completely change things up and go 45 yards downfield. Now, I want to use this opportunity to get on a soapbox a little bit that I was just on our message board before this show started. There is an argument against Connor Bazelak that is legitimate and makes sense. And that argument is he has had some struggles. He has turned the ball over. He is not dynamic. He is not the reason Missouri is winning games right now, right? And you kind of need him to be. So in no way am I saying Connor Bazelak has been one of the better quarterbacks in the country or that there should be no question. I've said 2 of the last 3 weeks, I'd have played somebody else. I'd have given other guys snaps against Tennessee and Texas A&M. So this is not me saying Connor Bazelak is fantastic. But that argument, which is legitimate, has quickly turned into, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Justin. This was happening on our message board, and I've seen it happen a lot in the last 3 weeks. It has turned into, this guy's a disaster and he's the problem. No, he's not the problem. With a different quarterback, and now I'm not talking about with Kenny Pickett or with Matt Corral, because those guys aren't an option. With a different quarterback that is an option on Missouri's roster, where's this team's record better? If you're saying they win the Kentucky game, I don't know, Bazelak threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. If you're saying they win the BC game, well, yeah, he threw an interception on the last play, but he also threw for 300 yards and got him to overtime and overcame a 10-point second-half deficit. So I don't know that one of the young guys on Missouri's roster necessarily does that. So I think you change the quarterback, this team's probably still 3-4. The quarterback's not the problem. One of the worst defenses in the country is the problem. It is the problem at the beginning, the middle, and the end. It is the entire book. Like, Connor Bazelak is maybe a footnote at the end. Oh, by the way, they haven't had exceptional quarterback play. They've had average quarterback play. And when you're playing with this defense, you absolutely need exceptional quarterback play. But that's not his fault that he's playing with this defense. They scored 28 at Kentucky. They scored 34 in regulation against BC. Tennessee was awful. A&M was awful. No question. And he shares part of that. But I don't know that it matters how good he was in either of those games, because when the other team was trying, Missouri's defense was never getting stops. They only really started to get stops when I think the other team shut it down and said, it doesn't matter, they can't catch us at this point. So the problem is 98% defense. We need to be focusing 98% of the irritation and the criticism on the defense, not whatever the percent has been, which I would say is no more than 50. It should be getting a lot more of the ire than it is, I think, which is crazy because it's gotten a lot of ire. But I'm off my soapbox. Stewart wants to know over-under on Beatty total yards 250. I would think under. I mean, to get to 250, that's pretty exceptional. And Steve says would like to see a second tailback take a big step forward. I agree. You want to see somebody because right now you just don't know who that guy is next week. Or next year, I should say. Next week it's still going to be Tyler Beatty. Robert says I want to see a fast start and a good first quarter. No question. Missouri started slow against Kentucky, started all right against BC, and then it just never started against Tennessee or A&M. I mean, those games were both over at 14-0 about 8 minutes in. Now, even if Missouri starts terribly, I don't think Vandy can end this game in the first quarter. They're just not good enough. But like if we get to the end of the first quarter and this game's 0-0 and the offense isn't really doing much, it's a pattern. Again, what are we going to judge coaches on? How do you start? Does your team look ready? Penalties. Does your team look disciplined? Turnovers. Is your team taking care of the ball? Missouri's not doing any of that right now, guys. And I mean, that falls on the same place it fell on 3 years ago. It just does. Now, that's not to say that Missouri has exceptional talent and they should be 6-1 or they should have beaten A&M. It's saying none of that. That doesn't have to be true to say that so far this season, Eli Drinkwitz has done a poor job and his team has been a disappointment. I think that is fair criticism. I think he would say that. He has said that, basically. So I don't think I am breaking ground here on those statements. Okay, so what I always do on this show is I always kind of replay our Thursday interview with somebody I know that covers the opposition. This week, that is Chris Lee. He has covered the Vanderbilt Commodores for a long time at VandySports.com. I'm not sure if he's been doing this quite as long as I've been here in Columbia, but he has covered Vandy for a long time. So we talked some big picture stuff with Chris, but also a little bit about this game. And so want to let you guys hear that conversation. Then we'll be back, talk a little bit more, bring Mitch Forty in, and get you set for kickoff here on the pregame call brought to you by Call and Gentry. I have myself, Chris Lee from VandySports.com. What's going on, Chris?
Well, we measure wealth in ways other than money. So I presume that's what you're referring to.
Well, I mean, it's fortunate we do, because if we measure it in terms of money, maybe fall a little bit short. But yeah, we are certainly rich with good games to talk about this season. This just maybe doesn't particularly happen to be one of them. Yeah. We'll get to it in a minute. We could actually just spend the next 22 minutes breaking down where the Braves stand at 1-1. I know that has consumed most of your thoughts over the last few days. So,
Yeah, it has been a fun time being a Braves fan, them not having been to the series this millennium. And with the crazy, and I won't talk too much about it because your audience probably doesn't care. But let me just put it this way. If you like baseball and you like crazy stories, this team is for you, because it has beaten an unbelievable amount of odds to get here. And it is thoroughly entertaining to watch the Braves right now.
Well, they are America's team this week, certainly. Outside the city of Houston, everyone rooting for the Braves, I think. And so, like you said, we're here to talk Missouri and Vanderbilt. So I just kind of want to – this is the easiest place to kick off this conversation to share with our viewers. I think I texted you on – it was probably Monday, might have been Tuesday. I'm not sure I trust Missouri to win this game, and you returned that text with, oh, they will absolutely win this game. So confidence high on both sides coming into this.
Yeah, it's probably never a good sign for either team when the beat writers of the respective beat are texting the other guy all the reasons that their team they cover is going to win. I mean, but it's been that kind of year. And frankly, on Missouri's end, I expected better. On my end, I don't know that I did, but I thought yours would go a little better than it has.
Yeah, I mean, Missouri has been certainly a disappointment. It's clouded a little bit by the last 3 weeks. It's not as bad as it's looked the last 3 weeks, but it is certainly a disappointment. On your end, I mean, everybody at Vanderbilt kind of knew coming into this year. Last year was rock bottom, and this roster might actually have had less talent. That's fair to say coming into the season, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. They lost their best two players on defense to the NFL. One was drafted mid-second round, and one made the Broncos out of camp as an undrafted free agent. And they were their two best pass rushers. And you looked at the team and said, my goodness, that they don't have speed. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that you can hang your hat on was Ken Seals, who did a really good job as a freshman a year ago. I thought played exceptionally well under the circumstances. And now he's hurt, and frankly, the offense kind of ruined him this season. I mean, the line can't block. They don't have time to set up any plays. The offense is too complicated. The throws are too long for too little. I mean, it was a bad lot coming in, but I think the way the team has coached has not helped.
Was this a situation that was created by they just kept Derek Mason longer than they should have? I mean – from the outside, obviously Mason wasn't doing a great job, but a lot of people look and say, hey, Vandy's not the easiest place to win. But everything I've seen from people that know a lot more about Vandy than I do is they let him just hang on way too long, and that's why they're in the situation they're in.
It was amazing when I talked to people over the years when it was clear he was not the guy, and it was clear he was not organized enough. The excuses that school would make
how long ago
him,
was that clear to you?
Oh, it was clear to me middle of year one.
Oh, wow.
And I'll give you an example. I use this a lot on my own stuff, but I had the parent of a starting player who was pretty good call me and just say, look, here's what's going on. My kid is getting one set of instructions from his position coach. He's getting a conflicting set of instructions from his coordinator, and he's getting a third and different set of instructions from the head coach. And if you watch them his first year, and it just looks so discombobulated, which at the time was a real shock from where they'd left off under James Franklin. They'd finished top 25 the year before. Now, look, he had replaced a lot of guys. They had a young team, and it was probably not going to go well. But from seeing a guy that had it all nailed down to seeing that, it was astonishing. And then when you started digging in, you found out why. Look, Derek was a guy that I remember he opened the season a year or two later saying, hey, good news, everybody. I found my call sheet. It was stuck in a book somewhere. It was just that kind of stuff throughout his tenure that you just shook your head and you said, how does he hang on to the job? No, to his credit, he took him to a couple of bowl games. He got him to 6 and 7. At Vanderbilt, that's not hard to do. And the kids liked him. I think for the most part, they played hard for him. But look, as a head coach, you've got to have it all nailed down, and he just never did. Head coaching is being a CEO. I think as a coordinator and a coach, he's fine, but he's not a CEO, and the details and the discipline just all it descended into one big mess a year ago. That got compounded by the conference-only schedule, and Clark Lee got left with that, and that's where they are.
I mean, it sounds a decent amount like what went on here before Eli Drinkwitz got here. I mean, it was not that bad under Barry Odom. He was okay. He was a 500 coach here, but a guy who maybe is better suited to be in charge of like half the team as opposed to be the front man for the team. And Mason and Odom are both doing decent jobs right now as defensive coordinators. So ironically, you correct me if I'm wrong, if he doesn't beat Missouri in 2019, is he fired that year?
I don't know. I still think he hangs on to the job because I was still getting excuses not long before that. And I think that the new AD at the time, who's now gone, was going to get rid of a basketball coach, and getting rid of a football and a basketball coach in your first year on the job. And frankly, they had a women's coach who needed to go too. He had a lot of house cleaning. I think he chose the one that was in his wheelhouse, which was basketball. Malcolm Turner came from the G League. So I don't know. I mean, I thought at the time he was going to be gone because you heard a lot of talk about it. Looking back now, maybe it didn't matter. I mean, they lost to UNLV that year.
Right. Right.
Not which also when UNLV beats you and fires its coach shortly thereafter, that's probably a sign that it's time for change. But for whatever reason, they didn't, and it went on longer than it needed to.
And that game, obviously, ultimately, I think, was the one that got Barry Odom fired. But it's also the game that this week a lot of Missouri fans are thinking of because they say, hey, yeah, maybe Vanderbilt's not good, but we're not good either, and we've seen better teams than this go to this place and lose to a bad Vanderbilt team, so they know it can happen. I mean, obviously anything can happen in a game, but that one is in the minds of Missouri fans. So from the other side of things, I mean, is something like that, can you see something like that happening this weekend, or is this Vanderbilt team not even, what that one was?
Well, look, after watching that year, I'd never say never, okay?
Right.
Because I didn't see that one anymore coming than I would see one coming Saturday. But, one thing about Missouri can't stop the run.
Well, I've noticed that in watching them play. It seems difficult.
It's been very discernible. But I think that, and the thing that you start to worry about this time of year is morale. And look, if Missouri shows up and plays hard, Missouri's going to win based on talent, even with the warts, right? I mean, barring something like 5 or 6 turnovers or just something crazy happening, short fields, Missouri's going to win the game, as bad as it seems. But I think it depends. And I'm not sure where Vanderbilt's head is a team in this either. I mean, when it goes bad late in the season and you start to hear grumbling, as we both heard, I think, on our respective beats, you wonder. But I think as bad as it seems for Missouri, I've watched that team. It can still generate plays on offense. And Tyler
Correct.
Beatty against bad defense has lit people up.
Mm-hmm.
They're bad defense. I mean, I could see them getting him the ball 35 times alone and just winning the game on that. I mean, could it happen? Yeah. I mean, you occasionally see some crazy things happen, but I'd be surprised if Vanderbilt pulls an upset.
Yeah, my analysis of this is Missouri is a bad half team. Right now, Vanderbilt is kind of a bad whole team. But let's talk about that run defense that you mentioned. I mean, there was a starting linebacker who was available yesterday, and somebody asked him what he'd seen out of Vanderbilt's offense, and he said, well, they're going to run the ball at us like every other team does. I mean, this is not difficult. You literally never throw a pass against Missouri until Missouri forces you to throw a pass. Jimbo Fisher didn't throw many because he didn't have to. So, I mean, I did have to laugh a little bit when Missouri defensive coordinator Steve Wilks said earlier this week that Vanderbilt had, I believe the quote was, dynamic backs. I mean, who's their running back, Chris? Like they've got injuries and they've got some problems in the running game, right? I know they have a quarterback who will probably start on Saturday who can run the ball a little bit, but as far as turning around and handing the ball off, who takes those duties?
Look, when people want to know why people like you and I don't take press conferences as seriously as the fans do, that's reason number one.
Yes. Every team is athletic, fast, well-coached, plays really hard, flies to the ball on defense, multiple on offense, want to be balanced on offense, but,
Yes. Well, dynamic would be one word to describe their running attack. I might could name some others.
Maybe not the right one, yeah.
Maybe not the one I was thinking of. But, in all seriousness to them, like I said, Clark had a tough thing to deal with from the minute he got the job. They've got 4 scholarship running backs on the team. One of them has no business being on scholarship. Their best one is hurt, has been hurt since the Stanford game. Mm-hmm. He's done for the year. So that leaves them with 2 running backs and then a defensive back that they brought over in fall camp, who's a true freshman. Patrick Smith has actually shown some signs of competency at times. And look, if you said after the game that he had a 100-yard rushing game, I wouldn't be shocked because I've seen a little bit in him. Rocco Griffin's the other guy. He's got a little bit of quickness, but he's really too small to be, I think, an SEC back. And that's it. And then they've got Mike Wright, their quarterback, who I think is going to play. Wright's the fastest kid on the team. He was a high school track star, but he just hasn't really figured it out how to make that translate. I don't know what it is, but you look at his rushing averages, and they don't suggest he's got track star speed. Now, maybe Saturday is the game that he figures it out, but he's not really run the ball well from the quarterback position. So, Look, I think they need a big game out of their backs, which they might get, and they need Wright to show something because the passing game is just not there.
That's what I kind of wanted to ask you. So, obviously, if you're Missouri, you have to go into this game saying we're putting like 12 guys in the box, right? I mean, because we can't stop. No matter what we've done, we've stopped no one running the football. I mean, stopping another team, I think they allowed 185 yards in one game. That was their best game of the year so far. And then Vanderbilt, I mean, can Michael Wright throw the football? Can they do damage through the air if somehow Missouri manages to force them to try?
I'm not sure what Mike Wright is. I think he is an athlete playing quarterback. Again, he was a 10'8", 10'9", 100-meter guy in high school. I think he's the fastest kid on their team. He does not throw the ball very well. He's got a decent deep ball, which he just kind of lofts up there, and he's had some success in that because I think people are so worried about the run. He does not make intermediate throws very well, and he's just a skinny kid, Gabe. I worry about the pounding he's going to take the rest of the year because he's about that big around between the shoulders.
Yeah.
And that's not really good when you're getting hit as often as their quarterbacks get hit. So I just think they need to figure something out with him. If I'm them, I'm trying to get 20 pounds on the kid and make him a receiver next year. But for now, he's their starting quarterback because I don't think you'll see Ken Seals. I think he's still going to be recovering from injury. You might see Jeremy Musa as a JUCO kid that we saw for the first time last week. But that's it. They don't even have another quarterback, even a walk-on, I don't think, on the roster right now.
Okay, so let's flip sides of the ball. You said, and this has kind of been Missouri's recipe, let's give Tyler Beatty 76 touches in a game, and he will win us a game. Obviously, Vanderbilt knows that. They need to sell out to stop that. Connor Bazelak he's not having a great year. He's not having as bad a year as Missouri fans think he's having. He's had some struggles. But he is a guy that I think is capable. If you just go in and say there's zero chance Beatty's beating us, look, he can't go beat Kentucky under those circumstances, but he should be able to win this game. But what's Vanderbilt got defensively, and is that the plan coming in? Is just, I know that was Tennessee. Josh Heupel said the week of the game, hey, everything they do goes through Beatty. So they just said, we're not letting Beatty beat us. I've got to assume that's the plan from Vandy.
Yeah, where they have had success is they play tighter coverages now than they did a year ago. And you're seeing some DBs jump some routes and get some picks. I think they had 2 all last season. I think they got 9 or 10 this year. So that's one thing that they can't. No, their DBs aren't fast, but they do what they can. And so that's one thing I think you'll see. The issue on this team gate is just speed. They don't have it on the back 7. They don't get a push with the front 7. They've got a little bit more in recent weeks. It's a talent thing. You'll see it when you watch them play. But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the plan. How well they can execute it, I don't know, but they have been good for a couple of picks lately, so there is that.
Yeah, so we talked beforehand. Look, there's a limited amount of time I can spend breaking down this game. I mean, the truth that people have asked me for a prediction. I said it's going to be 10-0 Missouri when everybody switches over to the cocktail party and forgets this game exists, right? So, but I did want to talk a little bit more big picture. I mean, generally, year one is a complete honeymoon period. I get the feeling it maybe hasn't completely been that for Clark Lee. Is he? I mean, is he responsible for any of this, or is this just such a bad situation that it's like, hey guys, you don't really get to start blaming him until like year 3?
I will preface everything I say with this. There are issues at Vandy that don't exist at any other program that you don't even know to look for. And then one day your phone rings and it's like, you won't believe it, but this is what's going on. And so Clark Lee, when you take over at Vanderbilt, you're like playing a perpetual game of whack-a-mole. Except there's holes and moles coming up that you don't even know are out there, right? So any criticism I would offer of Clark Lee is going to be having said that he's going to have more issues when he takes that job, which he did, than he's ever going to anticipate. And those things take time, right? Now, having said that, they were so bad a year ago that I think the bar was set so low that it was going to be hard for him to really earn a lot of bad will.
Right.
But one thing you can do is when you're not good, if you put people to sleep, that is a real recipe for getting criticism. And their offense is awful. They have scored 2 touchdowns in SEC games. They both came against South Carolina. Right. They've been shut out twice in the league. They're averaging, 13 points a game. They're averaging under 5 yards a play. The offense is too complicated. They don't use the middle of the field at all. They throw everything. They throw all these, 30-yard throws to make 10. It just doesn't make much sense, especially when you can't protect your quarterback. So having said that, he made a bad choice of offensive coordinator. He realized that in camp. He replaced him the first week of fall camp without telling anybody. Nobody knew till it leaked out, and we asked him the first week of the season. So that's always a bad sign. When you were changing your coordinator in camp.
Before a game?
Frankly, yeah. But 3 weeks before a game. But, that was not entirely unforeseeable. David Ride never called plays. He'd never been a coordinator. And why, when you're a rookie head coach, you do that, I don't know. He's a charismatic guy. I guess he made a good impression. They were also going to keep their old offensive line coach. They had him on staff in February. I thought he did a really good job a year ago with the worst offensive line talent I've ever seen. This year, they got back, 2 starters? Or maybe 1 or 2 starters and a couple guys who'd been backups that they didn't have last year who opted out for COVID. So they got all their guys back from last year except for their starting center, who was their best player. Then they bring back guys they didn't have a year ago, and the guys who came back are worse than they were 2 years ago, and the guys that played last year for the most part are worse than they were. The play calling and the offensive line, and especially when they could have kept the coach they had. They let Rye make the call on the coach. I think it was a bad call, and here they are. But, yeah, you're right. It's endeared him to some criticism at a time where really it was hard to go much downhill from where he took the job.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, look, we all know there's a food chain in college athletics, right? Everything is a little bit tougher at Auburn than it is at Alabama. It's tougher at Missouri than it is at Auburn. It's tougher at Vanderbilt than it is anywhere else in this league, and that's just the facts. So you have to strike this balance of once you know it's not the right guy, you've got to make that move. And Vandy probably didn't do that soon enough with Derek Mason, but also you can't just go changing things out every 2 or 3 years. I mean, you've got to get into year 4 and year 5 before you really know if this is the right guy, because that's the talent deficit he's trying to overcome. Even in the East, it's a very difficult league to try to come up from the bottom of, and I don't know if anybody knew the solution, it would have been solved, right, other than by James Franklin for a couple of years. But it's a really, like, you just have to be right. When you hire the coach, you have to be right. And if you're not, it's going to set you back another 5 years.
Let me give you an example of what they're up against. I have a podcast with Ken Seals, who was their starting quarterback until he got hurt. And I asked him, and by the way, the answer didn't surprise me. But I said, just walk me through your schedule. What's it like? He's like a computer science minor, so he's an academic kid. And I just asked him point blank, how many hours of sleep do you get during the season? He said 5 or 6 hours most nights. Mm-hmm. Sometimes last year it was 2. And I'm going, wait a minute. I can't do my job on 5 or 6 hours sleep. Your job is going to class.
Right. It's a little more physical.
And participating in a physically demanding sport. Mm-hmm. And his story is not alone. They don't have priority registration for their players. It's the only school in the conference where they don't have it. They don't let their kids go to summer school very much to make up for. In other words, a lot of schools.
I think most schools it is honestly required.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody will ever say it's required, but I don't know a single athlete who doesn't take summer classes.
Well, look, Gabe, to me, it is not damaging the student-athlete experience or delegitimizing these guys as students if you say, hey, take 10 hours or whatever in football season, right. Take PE or whatever. Take some easy ones. Go a little heavier in the spring, and then the summer make up some classes. Yeah, I mean, learning is learning. It doesn't really matter if you get it in the fall or the summer.
Right.
And frankly, when you're not worn out, you're going to learn better anyway. But they're very stringent on letting kids take summer school, from what I understand. In order to get in, you get a better chance if you're behind in your degree, which is a heck of an incentive to build in. If you want to get some rest, get behind on your degree path. I mean, that's a great message to send kids, right?
Right.
And so it's just all kinds of things that are stacked against him. Now, Clark is, again, the OC hire was a bad one. Their offense is abysmal to watch. He deserves some criticism for that. But again, when you're not playing with the full deck out of the gate, just with stuff like that, you would hope that he would get some time and latitude to fix those things, and the school would help him work on them where they just haven't before. And frankly, if they're going to have a fighting shot, it's going to take stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, Chris, appreciate your time, man. It's a game so big that the SEC invented a new kickoff time for it. First 2 p.m. game, I think, since I've been covering the league. So it's a barn burner on Saturday, man.
It beats 7 p.m., so we'll take that.
Very true. All right, that is Chris Lee from VandySports.com. Just always want to check in with somebody from the other side of things, give you guys some insight there, some injury updates that we are seeing via Twitter from reporters that are at the game. Vandy quarterback Ken Seals not dressed out. That was expected. As we were talking to Chris there, you kind of heard it sounds like Michael Wright was going to be the guy. They've known that most of the week. For Missouri, the questionable players, that is Chris Abrams-Drain, Mike Maietti, let me see who else, Akil Byers, they are dressed out. Realist George also going through warm-ups. He has been dealing with what Eli Drinkwitz has called a personal issue and has not played since the Boston College game. So he is back at defensive tackle, which is obviously good news for Missouri. They can use anybody that can suit up there. Let's take a look before we get Mitchell Forty in here in the next few minutes want to take a look around the rest of what's going on in the SEC today. Mizzou-Vandy, actually the first game. There is no 11 a.m. game today. Nearly half the league is on a bye week this week. The cocktail party, Georgia and Florida in Jacksonville, that's at 2:30. That one's on CBS. Ole Miss and Auburn is tonight in Auburn at 6 o'clock. And then Kentucky and Mississippi State also at 6 o'clock tonight. So 3 actually pretty good games and pretty impactful games in the league standings. Let's take a look at those standings. Over in the East, if Georgia wins this game, it is 6-0 in the East. It already has beaten Kentucky. It cannot. If Kentucky loses to Mississippi State and Georgia wins today, Georgia clinches the SEC East. But both of those things have to happen. Now, if Georgia loses and Kentucky wins, hey, Kentucky's right back there in a tie. They'd still need another Georgia loss, obviously. But if Kentucky wins today, they've got an excellent shot at 11-1 this season, which would be a Sugar Bowl. And look, if Georgia were to stumble here and maybe even in the SEC title game, there's a world in which Kentucky could make a playoff argument. It takes a lot of help. I don't think it's going to happen. But if you go 11-1 and your one loss is a relatively competitive loss to Georgia, you're at least in the conversation. A lot has to happen to get there, and I don't think we are going to get there. Just kind of throwing out some possibilities. Tennessee, South Carolina off this week in the East. Over in the West, Alabama is off. Ole Miss and Auburn playing. The winner of that game in position to get second place and maybe push Bama in the West if something goes, if they get a little help. Ole Miss has already lost to Alabama. Auburn obviously doesn't play Alabama until the last week of the year. But Ole Miss could catch Bama in the standings today, obviously would still lose the tiebreaker. Auburn could pass Ole Miss and be second in the standings. Mississippi State, again, down there, plays Kentucky and, hey, could get to 3-2. I mean, and look, all of a sudden Arkansas, which started out pretty good, is now 1-3 and in last place in the SEC West. So that's where we stand in the conference today. Take one more look at, hang on if I can find the right button to hit. Okay, we got to hit that button, and then we got to hit this button. One more look at the other things that are going on in the SEC. Georgia, Florida, 2:30. Ole Miss, Auburn at 6. Kentucky, Mississippi State also at 6. Obviously, the one most of you guys are paying attention to, Mizzou and Vandy, coming up at 2 o'clock on the SEC Network. Just a couple minutes away from having Mitchell Forty join us and take some more of your questions and talk about this game with him. But do want to remind you that our pregame show every single week. This is show number 8. We've got 4 more after this, coming to you from the Call & Gentry Law Group in Jefferson City, Missouri. You can get in touch with them online at callgentry.com. Also by phone at 573-691-4552. They can handle virtually any legal question you have. They have people that are experts in all different areas of law, family law, wrongful death, personal injury, business law, contract law. They could do just about anything you need. Again, it is callgentry.com. Just like the name says, and 573-691-4552 is the phone number. They are located in Jefferson City, but obviously you do not have to be located in Jefferson City to use their services, so please get in touch with them. Hit up a couple more of your all's questions real quick, and I've got to move some things around the screen, so just stick with me here, guys. Patrick Turgeon says, with this being somewhat of a lost season, how does Drink balance getting younger guys who might help later playing time and being fair to the older guys like Chisholm and Blaze? Coaches are still going to play the guys that give them the best chance to win. Now, one criticism I have had of Drinkwitz, I think once games have been over, he hasn't done a very good job of getting some of those other guys a chance, and that does include Brady Cook and Tyler Macon at quarterback. But, that's not all of them. Certainly there are other guys, whether it's Elijah Young, Michael Cox, whoever that might be, at running back, whether it's, some backup receivers getting a little more time, whatever. I don't think he's done a great job of getting those guys in the game. But key number one is to win the game. Key number two is, get some other guys some playing time, and especially if these are guys that now you're in the last 4 games of the year, maybe you can throw them out there and you're not looking at the possibility of burning red shirts and things like that. It's a special guest appearance now on the pregame show, at least on video, by Mitchell Forty, who, again, we are not traveling to cover games because we don't find it useful to spend money to talk to guys on a computer screen. So Mitch is remotely covering today. What's going on, Mitch? You fired up for this one yet?
Yeah, obviously, this is the game we've all had circled for a really long time. Huge opportunity here, clash of the Titans in the SEC. Someone is getting their first Power 5 win.
I mean, to be fair, it is kind of a huge opportunity for Missouri and Vanderbilt. I mean, and like we've been talking about this one from the Missouri side, but if you're Clark Lee, you have to be selling this to your team as, hey, this is possible. It was 21-20. We were right in the South Carolina game. If we're going to win a game, this is our chance.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last time they won a SEC game was against Missouri. I know both coaches have said that's not getting brought up. I'm sure it's at least mentioned. So, yeah, I mean, you would expect Vanderbilt to show up, ready to play. I mean, I don't know how much that changes things. They're going to be without their starting quarterback and leading rusher, and they're bad to begin with. But yeah, I would expect that they're at least motivated.
Well, that's I was running through some of the numbers. It is difficult in this day and age of football to average 13 points and 291 yards. I mean, those were decent numbers in 1968, but they're not so very good now.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Vanderbilt's offense is really bad. And yes, I know Missouri's defense is really bad, and they do have to prove that they can stop anyone. But yes, I mean, it's the numbers are not pretty. I mean, now I don't know who's going to play running back for Vanderbilt. Right. Granted, I'm not an expert on Vanderbilt's roster, but it's going to be down to their third string guy. So yeah, I mean, it's just as we've said all week, it's one of these games Missouri has to win.
And this is the game. If I'm Steve Wilkes, I don't care how many guys it takes to stop the run. If you have to put 9 guys in the box, put 9 guys in the box and make Michael Wright, who has not really shown that he can throw the football, and we're going to do kind of the same thing. I remember we did this before the SEMO game, right? We said, okay, what's a number that concerns you? So what's a number both rushing wise and points wise that if Vandy puts up, you look and go, well, all right, it ain't getting any better.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Probably nothing will make me feel like it is getting better. But yeah, you start to get concerned if, I don't know, I mean, probably, 150, 200 rushing yards, you'd be pretty worried about that. I mean, really, I would say 150 because this Vanderbilt team has been so bad. I mean, they've not run the ball well at all. They ran for 9 yards last week against Mississippi State. So you should, I think 150 is not too extreme to ask for. Points wise, I don't know. I mean, maybe 20-ish. It kind of depends, right? Because if Mizzou's marching up and down the field and they're, scoring at will, and that gives Vanderbilt extra possessions, that makes it, eventually they're probably going to hit something, and then, Mizzou might put in backups late in the game, which has not been a good thing for its defense. So it kind of depends. But, I would say you would certainly hope to keep them under 20.
You kind of hit on it, too, though. I don't know that there's anything that can happen today that I walk out and say, well, that's super meaningful.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you'd like to say, I don't know, I guess if they come out and win 48-7, maybe I go, oh, okay, well, that's better. They haven't done – because even against bad teams, they haven't done that this year. So,
right.
But I don't know that it would really change my mind on anything else the last, 4 weeks of the season.
Right. I don't think, I think best case scenario, you come out of today saying, okay, maybe they figured something out. Let's see when they play a team with a pulse. It's just all right, well, we'll wait till next week on the positive end. Worst case scenario is, oh my gosh, it's worse than we thought, and cancel the rest of the season.
Right. Well, and also the thing is, I won't draw any conclusions next week either.
Right.
I mean, because next week is at Georgia. If they lose that game 54-7, I'm not going to come out and say, well, it's all done. Right? Whatever. They got to win this one, and they're going to lose the next one. But unless a bunch of injuries happen, I don't really know what changes my mind going into, and I don't remember the exact order, but I think it's South Carolina, Florida, Arkansas.
Yeah, I think you're correct. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, barring a loss today or a win at Georgia, yeah, I think that yeah, you don't really end up making huge conclusions about the rest of the season based on the next couple weeks.
What if they lose today and win at Georgia? What
That
if
would
both
be
of those things
incredible. I think you could make a ton of money betting on those two outcomes. Like with $5 bets,
do a little parlay.
You would probably make a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it would have to qualify as the biggest 1 week turnaround in college football history, I would think.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that there's been someone in the past who's like lost to a bad team and then upset the number one team or something. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know.
Actually, I'm not sure about that.
Missouri's they're 16.5-point favorite this week. What are we like? What do you think the point spread is next week?
I don't know, like 27 maybe.
I was going to say 29 or 30. So if you were to lose as a 16-point favorite and then win as a 30-point underdog, I don't know. That would be up there.
I mean, we probably don't have to spend too much time worrying about it because the odds seem slim.
Well, frankly, I would rather talk about that than the X's and O's of Mizzou Vandy. But seen various tweets out there. Realist George on the field, Akil Byers on the field, Mike Maietti is out there, Chris Abrams-Drain is out there. So most of the guys that were listed as questionable seem to be playing. So really we're talking about Mookie Cooper, Sean Robinson, Chance Looper, Ish Burdine. Like, it's not helpful to be without those guys, but I don't see any of those guys where I look at it and say, well, this really changes the way I view this game.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, they're going to be thin at corner. I'm seeing tweets now actually that Allie Green is at least warming up. He was listed as questionable as well. So and I think Ish Burdine was doubtful. I don't think he's likely to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're going to be thin at corner. Already missing. Ennis Rakestraw, and then maybe Allie Green, maybe Chris Abrams-Drain. They're both warming up at least. Sean Robinson plays that nickel slot. They're going to be thin at slot receiver. You've got Mookie Cooper out. Chance Looper, it doesn't look like he's going to play. He was listed as doubtful. Barrett Bannister questionable, but Twitter tells me that he is out there warming up. So, I don't think either of those positions, though, are like make or break things in this game. I mean, like you said, the priorities number 1, 2, and 3 for the Mizzou defense are stop the run. Mm-hmm. And, if you have to put you should feel comfortable that you can have maybe man on the wide receivers and a deep safety and be okay. Still daring Mike Wright to beat you with his arm because he hasn't really shown the ability to do that. And then they have plenty of wide receivers. They go like 10 deep there. So
right, and I would think. I mean, obviously, we're going to see a few guys we haven't seen much of because of injury. We should see more J.J. Hester, things like that, but. Even beyond injury, is this finally a week we see some other guys that, whether it's freshmen or backups, that we haven't – I mean, obviously, look, if it's 21-10 in the third quarter, we're not going to see it. But if this game goes kind of the way people think it should, if you don't play today, I guess he's just not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's a good chance, but yeah, like you said, it depends how the game goes. I mean, like, especially from what we've seen of this Mizzou defense, like, I would think you got to have like a 4-score lead before you're comfortable putting those guys in. Right. Because every time they put it in the backups, it's not just the opponents scored, like they score in one play. So then you start to get in trouble if, you give up a couple quick scores. So yeah, I think it's very possible. And I definitely agree with the sentiment that if it doesn't happen today, when's it going to happen? But I just think it depends how the game unfolds.
Yeah, so running back, I mean, look, I think this is the game that you just give Tyler Beatty the ball 4,700 times, right? I mean, as often as you need to give it to him and until you are in a comfortable lead. But if that happens, you'd like to see Michael Cox a little bit. You'd like to see B.J. Harris. I'd say you'd like to see Elijah Young, but that just seems to be a thing that's not going to happen at this point in time. So I'm not sure about that. But the other position I'm a little bit curious about is linebacker. Jamie Petway had started to play, and now he's gone. Devin Nicholson and Chad Bailey are the starters. Blaze Aldridge is still the third guy, even though his snaps have gone way down. I don't even know. I guess the fourth guy is Damian Wilson, true freshman?
Yeah, I would guess so as well. I'll be interested to see what they do there as well, because last game they actually rotated fairly evenly between the two starters and the two backups, which I found kind of weird.
Right.
I guess that's just them saying, like, we don't know who's best, so you all can just play.
Neither of them work
on this given day, right? Yeah. So I'll be curious. I would guess they won't do that, but maybe they do. Maybe they give, Blaze Aldridge and whoever the fourth guy is, who I would guess Damian Wilson as well. Give them, every other series or something like that. That is definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I know that this is the first day all season, really, that you've gotten to actually watch other football. Well, you probably watched some last week, but it's an interesting day in the SEC. Like there's hardly any games, but outside of this one, they're all actually really interesting games. Georgia, Florida coming up in an hour. Like, I don't know, Georgia's a 2-touchdown favorite, and I would say that's not nearly enough, but the worst team seems to win this game almost every year to me.
Yeah, well, and also, Florida does. They have shown an ability to get up for big games. They pushed Alabama, obviously, and, Georgia's also not a team that's going to, blow you out, so you could also have the possibility of the late cover or something like that. So, yeah, interesting game there for sure. It's always a good game. Always a rivalry game. Georgia
actually has blown a lot of people out, though. Like, they're playing so well.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is they're not gonna. It's not gonna be 42-0. It would be 28-7 or something like that, and then you could get the late touchdown cover.
Yeah, that's fair. I saw some reports that Anthony Richardson is starting that game at quarterback for Florida, the true freshman.
That could be fun.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Yet kind of another example of a guy that. I don't think I can't even remember who the starter was, but I don't think he's been bad. He just hasn't maybe been great, so they're looking for a little bit of a spark.
I think Emory Jones was the starter. I think it's just that, in small sample sizes, Richardson's been so electric that they can't just they have to see what they have in him.
The other one, so Kentucky plays Mississippi State. If Georgia wins the cocktail party and Mississippi State beats Kentucky, the SEC East is already over. It's not even Halloween, and Georgia may have clinched it.
Yeah, that could happen. I was a little surprised when I saw that Mississippi State is favored. I know that they obviously blew out Vandy last week. I don't know that you really get any credit for that. But yeah, I would think Kentucky's the better team, but traveling to Starkville, it should be a good game.
Yeah, and then I think Ole Miss Auburn should actually be the 2:30 game. I think it's the best game, except CBS signed the contract 40 years ago.
This is one of these games that's contractually obligated to be played at 2:30 or 3:30. The Georgia Florida game. I'm pretty sure when the season starts, you just know that game. It's like the Red River game. It's always at 11. This one's always at 2:30.
Yeah, but I think everybody's conceding the SEC West. It's not necessarily over. Ole Miss and Auburn are there in contention. Auburn, I got to give Auburn credit. They're a lot better than I thought they were. I still don't really think they're good, but they keep finding ways to win.
Right, yeah. No, until proven otherwise. And this could be a time when they're proven otherwise. But that should be, I would think that'll be an entertaining game. I feel like weird stuff will happen, any Ole Miss night game, crazy stuff happens. And then you've got, playing at Auburn will be a raucous crowd. Should be a good number of points scored. So, yeah.
Yeah. Elsewhere, Michigan is, I guess it's time to start talking about Michigan as a playoff team because they're kind of rolling Michigan State in the third. And then, I don't know, man. I've been hard on this Cincinnati bandwagon, but 21-12 under Tulane doesn't exactly scream to me you're the team that should get a chance.
Yeah, it's tough. I think that obviously style points probably matters for them more than any other team in the country. And I still think that, it's going to come down to if they go undefeated, they're going to need some help still, no matter what the results are. Every team does have kind of a sluggish day, but yeah, you would like to see a little more assertiveness there.
They keep having sluggish days. Illinois Rutgers, a big game going on right now. Illinois, Maryland. God, there's some trash college football out there. It's
yeah.
But just wait till 2. The big games start in Nashville. Mizzou and Vandy. Did you?
Yeah, the way we're talking about Illinois Rutgers, a lot of people are probably talking about Mizzou Vandy this week.
I think you picked Mizzou to cover. Is that right?
I did. I'm getting a little nervous about it. I'm not really sure what I was thinking. I decided, not for no real reason this week. I just decided. Well, the reason was I looked at Vanderbilt's numbers and I was like, oh my goodness, they're bad. I decided that Vanderbilt is going to be the exception that proves the rule that Mizzou can't cover. Because the last time Mizzou covered the spread was against Vanderbilt. I think they'll do it again today and then maybe never do it again all season.
So this is the perfect example, though, of where you will predict something, but if it actually came down to putting betting money on it. There's zero chance because the one thing you wouldn't do is say, well, this thing hasn't happened all year, so I'm going to bet money on the fact that it happens today.
Right. Yeah, we should be clear that I don't take my predictions all that seriously. I mean, at one point earlier this year, you picked Mizzou to win 81-78. It's not like, we're not exactly backing up our words with our wallets.
For a while in the third quarter, it looked like 81-78 was in play in that game, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think that was the North Texas game I predicted
that
final score. So, I don't know. I think we both see kind of the same thing. Missouri wins. You picked them to cover. I didn't. Nothing that we see today is going to hugely change our minds. But I said at the beginning, you know what the main thing I want to see is? I want to see two things. I want to see a team that looks like it wants to be there, and I want to see a team that stops doing stupid things like some of the penalties it's committed in the last 3 weeks.
Well, yeah, coming out of the bye, and those things were both talked about so much. I mean, slow starts, turnovers, penalties. You'd like to see those mistakes cut down. In addition to the two things you mentioned, I'd like to see Connor Bazelak, show that he can throw the ball downfield and play better, take care of the ball. I mean, he really. I think that a lot of the heat he's gotten has been somewhat unwarranted, but he was bad last game, and really he's been bad for 3 games now, or at least not as good as he had been for 3 games now. But Vanderbilt's defense has been terrible. Like, no surprise that their whole team's kind of been terrible, but especially bad against the pass. I think that this is an opportunity for Bazelak to kind of just, get his groove back, get some confidence back going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. We talked earlier in the week. I don't think Eli Drinkwitz. I don't think it was accidental when he brought up quarterback competition. Mm-hmm. I don't think he wants to make a change. But look, if we're sitting in the early third quarter of this game and it's 14-10, I could see this being the day it happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree. I think that he was intentional in saying this week, like, look, we believe in Connor, but we have to have other guys right. We have competition there. And yeah, I think he knows that. I mean, you can't lose this game. So if things are starting to go south with Bazelak, you can't, sink your ship with him at the helm. I mean, you got to try something else. And the one way I think Mizzou loses this game is turnovers. And so if we see a couple picks early from Bazelak, I could see him getting the hook.
So real quick, we're just going to kind of finish up with this. I think I forwarded you the picture. My friend that covers Vanderbilt sent me a picture at 1:15. Like, I'm not I understand it was 47 minutes before kickoff, but I am not exaggerating when I say there are literally tens of people in the stands. Like, I think less than 50 people were in the stands at 1:13, which is he then just sent me another screenshot. Tickets as low as $2. So if you are in the Nashville area, not only are there seats available, but literally you would pay more for the bottle of water in the stadium than you would pay for your seat.
That is fairly incredible. To be fair, I mean, I can't imagine. I can't imagine going to the game as is. I mean, clearly we had an opportunity for me to go for work, and I chose not to. But
we would have had to
I will say, if you are going to be there, I guess, I would say don't get there 47 minutes before. Yeah, go, have a nice brunch in Nashville, a nice, time on Broadway. Stroll up right when the game starts, pay your $2, and then probably leave early as well.
But, I mean, seriously, if I had gone and I'd had lunch at Puckett's and I'm just rolling around downtown Nashville and I'm like, hey, there's a noise over there, I would pay $2 to walk into a game. Even if I didn't know who was playing, I would pay $2.
Probably, but also then again, there's probably more fun things you can find to do in Nashville, so it's a tough call. If you're staying at that Marriott that's connected to the stadium, you can actually just kind of watch from your room if you're in the right spot. So
that's true.
Save yourself the $2.
That's true. I have done that. Tiercell suggests that this one be called the Free Bowl. It's not free, man. It's $2. I actually like the name the $2 Bowl a little bit better.
Yeah. $2, it's not, this isn't your grandpa's $2. $2 doesn't go very far these days.
Justin Ferguson points out that the Ticketmaster fees would actually be more than the tickets.
Gosh. Yeah.
This is where we're at, guys. But in all seriousness, look, it is a game Missouri. I don't want to be on here in 4 hours talking about Missouri losing to Vanderbilt. That would make for a very poor evening.
Yeah, that would be, deserving of the meltdowns. So you just don't want to have to deal with that.
Yes. The callers would make headlines this week if that happened. So, all right, Mitch, well, appreciate it, man. We'll let you go. Everybody keep up with updates on the message board, and we will have full post-game coverage, and we'll talk to you later, man.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, Mitchell Forty joining us. I wanted to get him in here and kind of help fill some time and get another perspective here on this game. So we did that. Appreciate all of you guys being here. We are now about 20 minutes from kickoff. Again, Mizzou and Vandy at 2 p.m. It is on the SEC Network. That is where you can watch it. You can listen to it on the Tiger Radio Network at whatever station you listen on. We expect a Mizzou win. We'll wait and see. The way it works after the game, basically as soon as it's over, Mitch will hop on the post-game Zoom call with Eli Drinkwitz and various Missouri players, whoever is made available. I will immediately start the post-game drink. Right after the game, I'll update a few stats, get a few graphics ready. Generally takes me about 10 minutes after the clock hits 0. Then I will be on here with the post-game drink. We'll take your calls. Same place you came to watch this one. Join us for the post-game show. Again, if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get an alert. So we encourage you to do that. Before we check out here, ask you to hit the like button on the show and come back and join us post-game. Want to thank one more time the Call and Gentry Law Group. You can check them out at callgentry.com. If you've got some legal needs, you can schedule a consultation right there online with them there in Jefferson City. Handle all aspects of law that you could need. Again, you do not have to be in Jefferson City to get in touch with them. They can travel all over. They have handled cases all over the state, all over the country. So callgentry.com. Check them out. Schedule a consultation if you are in the need for some legal advice. Appreciate them making this show possible. Appreciate you guys joining us and hanging out here with us for a little bit before kickoff. Again, 18 minutes away, Mizzou and Vandy. We'll be back here to talk about it afterwards. We'll see you then.